human beings think about themselves and their needs more than they think about other people. An ideal relationship where trust has been established is one where intentions, goals, reasoning, and best interests are mutually aligned, and they are made known verbally to both parties. To me, it's very ironic that Raya's father, who seemed to be this extremely fair-minded, idealistic, visionary man who believed in the equality of all peoples and unity and all of these kind of utopian, peaceful ideals, was the man who was in possession of the very thing that was making people feel unequal. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, and over here we discuss life topics by analyzing characters from popular TV and film. So today we're talking about Disney's newest animated film, Raya and the Last Dragon. And our topic for today is establishing trust. Now, if you've seen the movie, you know that trust is a major running theme throughout the movie. And this video is not a critique on how the writers decided to convey that theme in the movie, if they did it right, if they did it wrong. In my videos, we talk about ways that we can deal with the issue at hand, different steps that maybe some of the characters did or did not take dealing with these issues, and how we may or may not do some of the same things to deal with these topics. So overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I think I went in with super high expectations, and maybe that's why I can't say that I love the movie, but it was a good movie nonetheless. So a light summary to refresh our minds. The story takes place in the world of Kumandra. Both humans and dragons live in this world, but eventually their land is attacked by something called the Droon. It's not really explained exactly what the Droon are, but we know that whenever they are released, anything that they touch turns to stone. So a battle ensues, the dragons versus the Droon. The dragons ultimately sacrifice themselves to save humanity, but in the time that they are gone, humanity has found a way to split themselves up, to disagree with one another. There are a lot of problems in this new world void of the dragons. And now the Droon have returned. So at the beginning of the movie, we meet a young Raya preparing to take her place as protector of the dragon orb and as the leader of her people. They show the interactions between her and her father, and we get a sense that her father is this sort of visionary man who has a dream of bringing back together all the peoples of Kumandra the way that it once was when the dragons were still alive. And he tries to instill this belief system into his daughter as well. Raya is not necessarily of this same mind. She is not quite as trusting as her father, and she sees things a bit differently. So her father decides to bring together all the peoples of Kumandra, sort of to establish some type of alliance with the different branches. And as he invites them, a major betrayal happens between Heart and Fang. And during this betrayal, the people of Fang attempt to steal the dragon orb from the people of Heart. In doing so, they break the orb, and the people from all the lands scramble to pick up the pieces, as many pieces of the orb that they can, and make off with them back to their own countries. So essentially this summit, and it results in a large attack from the Droon. The Droon turns many people from many different lands into stone, and only a few remain. There's a time skip, some years go by, and we meet back up with Raya, who is now searching for what she believes to be the last remaining dragon, who she eventually finds, and they start off on their mission to restore all of the people that were turned to stone and to ultimately defeat the Droon. But as I said before, Raya has never been the most trusting person, and certainly she's not after the betrayal from a girl that she once considered her friend, who is Namaari from Fang. So we have Raya, who is particularly distrustful, and then we have the last remaining dragon, Sisu, who seems to be very naive, very much in her own world, very much so believing the best in people, more so of how Raya's father was before he was turned to stone. So we see Sisu and Raya disagreeing fundamentally on a number of things. How they should approach to dealing with the peoples of Kumandra, how they should approach getting back the pieces to restore the stone. A lot of things they disagree on because of how they both see the world. But eventually, via what some people might consider not a very good way to convey the theme of trust to children. And we see Raya begin to trust again, and ultimately putting trust in the very person that she trusted at the very least, who was Namaari. And things work out and blah blah blah. Dragons return, it's all a good ending. So, like I normally do in these videos, I give 3 tips to deal with the issue at hand, establishing trust based on what the characters either did wrong or right in the film. And we think about how we could employ some of the same tactics to deal with that issue. So, number one is to have a realistic understanding of best interests and human selfishness. I think many of us are raised the way that Raya was raised. A lot of our parents give us this idea that if we put out good, if we treat people the way that we want to be treated, if we are good people, then the world will give us back that same energy. The people that we interact with will treat us well and do right by us. And while to an extent that may be true, I don't think we really give children a full picture of the world and the people in it when we explain things to them this way, without any nuance. Now, it's understandable that you would explain things to children in a way that is simple, but I do think it's important to give them more of the moving pieces that they'll need to move in the world as they get older. People also have to understand that the vast majority of people that they are going to deal with are operating from a base of self-interest, and they are moving in a way that they believe is going to best propel them forward. They are not considering you in the way that you are considering you. Your interests are not going to be above someone else's when you're dealing with them. Even if they're nice, even if they're kind, human beings think about themselves and their needs more than they think about other people. And the sooner that we can understand this, the sooner we can begin to see people for what they really are. And I don't mean this in a completely negative way. It also helps with empathy, understanding other people and having grace when dealing with other people, knowing that it's very natural for people to put themselves first. So you don't go out expecting them not to do that. You don't go out expecting someone to sacrifice themselves for you. You don't expect someone to treat you better than they treat themselves. The one exception to this might be a parental relationship. Maybe your mother and father would be willing to put you first. Some parents aren't, but that's not for this video. For the most part, human beings have a survival instinct, and they put that before any type of higher functioning emotional intelligence, where they would think and consider the people around them before they would consider preserving themselves. So when we look at the peoples of Kumandra, it's very easy to look at them on the surface, extremely selfish, extremely violent, extremely unwilling to understand, and they just attacked and they tore apart the orb without any consideration and all of these things. But this is what people naturally do. In other people's minds, they are doing the right thing. They are making the right decisions. You may not judge them as just or righteous, but in their minds, in their community, in their whatever it is, they do believe in their cause. And that's because they're operating from a different standpoint than you. They're operating in a way where they come out successful, where their people are doing well. And if we're honest with ourselves, we're operating in the same way. We are doing things that are offensive to other people, that other people don't deem right, but we know that they benefit us in some way. And once we kind of understand this base nature of humanity, we can stop putting so many expectations on people and believing the best, when in truth we need to be more realistic and more honest about who many of us really are. And it's not necessarily that everyone's evil, it's that everyone is concerned with self-preservation first. With this understanding, you can move differently throughout the world. You can decide how vulnerable and how open you're going to be with people based on who they are and what their interest is. Raya was so young at the beginning of the movie, there was no way she really could have known this without maybe her father letting her know. And that's why I said this kind of idea of our parents teaching us this sort of incomplete understanding of the world. If young Raya would have known or would have understood the position of Fang and the idea of self-preservation of another nation, she would never have invited Namaari or a person from another nation in to see their nation's most valuable possession. Like I said, she's a child, she couldn't really have understood, but had her father taught her that earlier on, especially since Raya was going to be the new protector of the dragon orb, she would have understood that other people are operating in a way and from a place of them wanting to succeed, from them wanting to survive and to do as well as they possibly can. Meaning, if they have an opportunity to get that, to maybe even take it from you, they might very well do that. Not because they want to see you fail and they want to destroy you per se, but because it may be their belief that that is the best way and or only way to go about getting what they want. They're operating from a place where they believe they're going to give themselves their best chance. It wasn't my understanding that they particularly hated the people of heart. It was that they wanted to give their own nations, they wanted to give themselves their best chance. So once you see people as that, they are just trying to give themselves their best chance, it helps you move in a more informed way, and it gives you certain insight and wisdom into the way that other people are moving and the way that you can sort of begin to predict the way that people are going to act, the way that people are going to move, which helps you better protect yourself and better reach your goals as well. And it'll give you a more realistic understanding of trust and when it makes the most sense or not the most sense to give it. If we think about it, some of the best relationships we have are when we and the person that we trust, our interests are aligned. Anytime y'all have different goals, anytime y'all have a different way of looking at things and y'all have different things that you want and y'all are at different levels in terms of how you're faring in this world, any type of major inequality, it's very difficult for those people to really trust each other because they're going to move in different ways. Which leads into point number 2. The importance of honesty and transparency is crucial in any relationship where there's going to be real trust. An ideal relationship where trust has been established is one where intentions, goals, reasoning, and best interests are mutually aligned, and they are made known verbally to both parties. That's really when the ball gets rolling in a productive, long-lasting relationship. That's when you can say,
I don't know exactly what you're about to do. You didn't tell me all of the steps, but I know what your intentions are. I know what your goals are. I know why you do the things that you do. So I'm going to leave it to you.
And vice versa when the other party needs to do the same. That kind of trust is established when people are honest and upfront with one another about those things. If we look at Raya and Sisu, as I said earlier, they have two very different ways of understanding and looking at the world. They are not on the same page when it comes to past experiences and future goals. Their intention is the same in the sense that they are both looking to save the people that have been lost to the Droon, but they don't understand where the other is coming from, and therefore they can't see eye to eye in the way that they approach things, which makes it a little bit difficult for them to work together as a team. Often Sisu goes behind Raya's back and tries to make things happen in her own way because she doesn't really trust Raya's methods. And often Raya leaves Sisu alone, not letting her accompany her on whatever mission it is because she doesn't trust Sisu to do what she's supposed to do. So they're in alignment in terms of the ultimate goal, but they don't trust each other to go about it in the right way. They have their way of looking at their best interests. And it isn't until much later in the movie that we finally begin to see both of them open up. But Sisu, who seems to be so open in the very beginning, it seems like, well, she wouldn't hide anything. She wouldn't not say anything, but she actually was holding back information that possibly could have helped Raya understand her earlier on. She finally tells Raya nearing the end the backstory of her brothers and sisters, the other dragons, how they handed the orb to her and gave her the final say-so, gave her the final mission, and they trusted her. And this is why she has this understanding of trust that Raya does not. Holding that kind of information back, holding information about why you think the way you do and how you actually think from a person that you want to develop a more intimate relationship with, makes for problems down the road. Because as we can see with Raya and Sisu, what happens is when someone doesn't understand why you're doing this, they don't know your backstory, they don't get you like that, what often they'll do, they'll either go behind your back completely like Sisu and say, you don't know what you're talking about, Raya. I'm about to go bring this little gift basket. and I'm gonna make everything okay. Or you turn into a Raya where you don't even communicate with the other person. You just leave them and I got this handled style of things, and you go in and you try to handle them alone. So if you want to establish a trusting relationship, then you have to be open enough to explain to the person your backstory, how you think, and why you think the way you do. Now, major caveat here. You don't do this with everybody because everyone is not responsible enough to handle that information. Some people will flip that on you and try to manipulate you. So this is just for the people that you know you want to have some type of long-lasting, meaningful relationship with. And you have to be vulnerable enough with them to share that kind of information. So when it comes to the real deal stuff that hits people in relationship, the real life that begins to happen, that you're not leaving each other behind, that you're not being dishonest with each other, that you're not going behind each other's backs when it comes down to the nitty-gritty. Having that understanding about someone's backstory, about why they think the way that they do, really helps you empathize with that person. And it helps you to not be so dismissive of a person when they react in a way that you don't understand. If you've ever been in an argument with someone and you're pouring your heart out to them and you're passionate and you're telling them and you're trying to convey it and you're using big words and you're trying to get in depth and they're just looking at you like,
I don't know what you're talking about, but I wish you would stop talking. I'm about to turn this radio back up.
It's so infuriating and it's really hurtful. But when this happens, it's often because they don't know where you're coming from. They'll often say that, like,
I don't know where all this is coming from.
Because they don't. They can't relate to you. Raya did not understand all this trust energy, all this positive, optimistic energy that was coming from Sisu. She wrote it off as, oh, this dragon's been dead for 500 years. She's just naive. She don't know what's going on. But when she learned about who Sisu was, that backstory of her brothers and sisters, she could say, oh, okay, this is why she's like that. This is why she approaches things like that. This has been her experience. And it gives some, not that you need validity to feel the way that you feel, but let's be real. When we are listening to other people, we want to know what happened and if something happened, and give me examples, give me experiences in order to kind of validate what they're saying. It helps us understand it more. Raya, hearing Sisu explain this, made this trust argument, this trust idea more real for her. All right, number 3. Is that the give and take in any given relationship where there is going to be trust needs to be as close to equal as possible, or at least perceived as equal by both parties. And for this, I want to look at the example of Heart having the dragon orb versus the rest of Kumandra. Now, I want us to take note that we don't know that that dragon orb on its own had any power, or that it was doing anything, or that it was making Heart successful. But we do know that the other nations believed that that is why Heart was so prosperous, was because they were in possession of the dragon orb that no other nation had. Now, I would have liked a little backstory on why Heart was in possession of the dragon orb, being that it wasn't really theirs. The dragon apparently lived amongst all the people, so I don't know why Heart would have the orb. But going back to tip number 1, understanding that most people are operating from a basis of survival and in their best interest, we know that Heart having the dragon orb would be a problem. Anytime there's inequality or perception of inequality, there's going to be discord and discontentment amongst the people who are not at the top, or do not believe that they are at the top. And there's going to be a constant struggle, a constant battle for those at the bottom trying to make their way to the top, or a more personal relationship between people who believe that they are giving more than they are receiving. There's going to be constant discord in this kind of relationship, and it's going to be almost impossible to establish any real trust, because that foundational basis of survival and best interest is not being met. And to me, it's very ironic that Raya's father, who seemed to be this extremely fair-minded, idealistic, visionary man who believed and the equality of all peoples and unity and all of these kind of utopian peaceful ideals was the man who was in possession of the very thing that was making people feel unequal. I think there's something to be said for that, but I ain't going there. That ain't what this video is about. As long as there's inequality or perceived inequality, there can be no trust between those parties. So many people are in relationships, all kinds of relationships, that are so unequal. One party is giving so much more than they're receiving. They're unfulfilled in these relationships, and they all kind of have the same underlying issues of there's a trust issue. And when I first watched the movie, the scene where the dragon orb broke and the different peoples were scrambling trying to get the pieces for themselves, for their countries, my first kind of visceral reaction was when the Droon sort of turned into stone. I was like, oh, that's what they get, sitting there and broke these people's orb. But as I began to think about it, and as I wrote the script out for this video, I understood it more. Inequality breeds contempt, and you can't expect people to just stay in that state of being below, being without. They're going to become very distrustful, and they're going to do what they can to reach that state of best interest. They're going to do what they can to give themselves their best chance. So if you want a meaningful relationship where you can trust one another, make it equal, make it reciprocal, make sure you're pouring into one another. Neither party should be on E. It's really unproductive, and it ensures that the relationship will not last. So guys, that is it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you would like to be alerted when I post new videos, and I will see you guys in the next video.